Hi, friend.
Hi, friend.
Hey, guess what? We're going to have a pizza party.
We sure are going to have a pizza party.
Yeah, so season two of our podcast is coming out on August the 18th, and we are having a party to celebrate season two. It's going to be at Spinelli's Pizzeria on Baxter Avenue here in Louisville. So we encourage our listeners to stop by anytime between 5 and 8 o'clock that night to network, to celebrate with local nonprofits, come meet season one VIPs, win door prizes, and get access to KPF resources. So we really hope people will come check us out.
Yes, and we will put details on how to RSVP for that event in the description below.
Yes. So today is our final re-release from season one, and we're sharing our interview with Cody VanBoxel of Disabled American Veterans. And this episode, I think, is really like the epitome of what we do here on this podcast. We highlight nonprofit leaders who are actively working to reduce burnout, and we're uplifting the work of nonprofits.
Yes, and the DAV is certainly an organization that we want to uplift. They're doing amazing work to support veterans. So the DAV is a national nonprofit headquartered here in Kentucky, and they are offering a myriad of services to veterans and their families. You can get support from transportation needs, medical support, job fairs, grants, resources, and so much more. If you're a veteran or if you know a veteran who's looking for services, we hope that you'll check out dav.org.
Yeah, and even if you are not a veteran or you don't know a veteran, you can still volunteer with the DAV and find ways to get involved with the work that they're doing on their website. And Cody talks a little bit in this episode specifically about ways that folks can get involved. So for now, we hope you enjoy our conversation with Cody VanBoxel.
Welcome to the Burnout Room, a podcast about burnout, effective leadership, and well-being in nonprofits.
I'm Dr. Courtney Keim, a workplace wellness researcher and professor.
And I'm Sarah Burris, an organizational leader and nonprofit wellness advocate.
Whether you're facing burnout, leading a team, or working to build a healthier workplace, this is your space to find support, community, and solutions for any organization. On today's episode, we talked to Cody VanBoxel, Executive Director and CFO of Disabled American Veterans. Cody told us how he strives to be a servant leader, why detachment and building routines are important to combat burnout, and how to develop a positive work culture through caring and connection. We hope you enjoy this episode.
I'm excited to welcome Cody VanBoxel to the podcast today. Cody is a service-connected disabled Marine Corps veteran of the Iraq War and also served in Africa, Europe, and Asia before earning his degree in business. He is the executive director and CFO of Disabled American Veterans, DAV, a national nonprofit headquartered in Erlanger, Kentucky, with nearly 1 million members. As a DAV Life member, Cody has advanced through leadership roles since joining the organization in 2011, helping spearhead major initiatives like DAV Patriot Boot Camp and additional programming that supports veterans and their families. Cody, welcome to the Burnout Room.
Yeah, thank you so much. I couldn't be more excited to be here. I love any opportunity I get to chat about important issues, things that we're involved in, that I've been involved in. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you here. So as you know, this is a podcast about burnout and burnout prevention. So to get us started, we like to ask our guests to define what burnout is to them. And in your response to us, you said that burnout isn't about a lack of commitment. It's about hitting a wall where constant effort isn't matched by rest or support, which I really love that definition. Can you say more about what you meant by that?
Yeah. So, boy, burnout is just so prevalent in our world, right? And in the nonprofit world in general. And it's really a struggle. People want to do so much, and there's always a reason to do more. And what happens is people just keep pushing themselves, and they're just not reflecting on themselves individually and what they need. And I think that's inherent in a lot of people that work for nonprofits, right? And especially those career nonprofit employees. We have people that pass through, if you will, but those who are just that personality at heart, and they care about whatever their mission may be. They give. And at a certain point, you have to turn off the spigot and you have to take a step back, because if you don't take that step back and get that rest, if you don't recoup that energy, you potentially are doing a disservice at worst. If not, you're not giving all you can and helping the cause like you should without having that opportunity to recharge.
Yes. I love the way that you frame that about being something that employees and staff of nonprofits need to be in a situation where they are allowed to like take the time off, to turn the spigot off, as it will, to be able to not have that mission creep come in to the point where they feel guilt that they can't take off because there's so much work that you have to do. So I really appreciate that framing too, of there is something maybe different about people who go to work for nonprofits, that they are the people that really do care. They may be ones that find it more difficult to put up those boundaries because they're in the nonprofit world for a reason, and that's probably to serve. I mean, do you feel like you see that in many of your staff, especially staff that have been there for a long time? Like they're so driven by mission and they have such that service heart that it's hard for them to take time off?
Yeah, and especially early on in my career. So when I started with DAV, I was a national service officer apprentice, and what that is essentially a benefits counselor. So sitting down one-on-one with veterans, caregivers, survivors, dependents, anyone who's really walking into a DAV office, calling us, emailing us, looking for service and assistance for whatever benefits needs they may have. And very quickly I got burned out, because it was that passion that I had. I showed up at DAV's door because I was volunteering with a nonprofit that was helping veterans with PTSD. And I always dreamed of being an electrician. That was my plan in life. I was going to go in the Marine Corps, get out and become an electrician. And I got hurt, and that work just won't work for me anymore. Physically, it's not something I can do, and I had to transition and thought, if I'm going to sit behind a desk, I want to do something meaningful, and that led me down that path of volunteering, then led me to the path of a professional career. It was so hard early on in my career to, at the end of the day, and maybe I put in 8 hours, maybe I put in 9 hours, maybe I put in 10 hours, but there's still veterans that need help. There's still a widow that needs a phone call, and turning that spigot off is just phenomenally difficult, and to separate yourself emotionally, right? And I think that's something true about people who work for nonprofits, right? There's an emotional aspect to us. We're not just dealing with numbers. Oftentimes we're dealing with human beings, we're dealing with animals, we're dealing with the environment, we're dealing with so many things that have an emotional pull to us. And so it's not about forgetting your purpose. It's about taking a step back, right? I love my children, but you better believe me, I need a minute sometimes. And, just rephrasing that in your mind that, you can't do anything. And another example I was just explaining to someone is, there's a common question, right? If you were a superhero, what powers would you have? And
Ooh, I
and
love that question.
it's a
Yeah.
great question, but
Yep.
coming from a nonprofit, that's terrifying to me, because the first thing that comes to my mind, I can't help everyone. And so I think I'd be the most miserable superhero in the world, because there's people getting robbed all over the place and you can't help them all. And so, it's there's this balance of where you can absolutely you're making a difference, but you're also taking care of yourself and your well-being, which is significant. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. I appreciate you bringing up the emotional aspect around working for nonprofits. I think so often you're right. We're so focused on what we're doing, the mission, the passion that we feel about that, and sometimes the guilt we feel for not being able to help all of the people that we know need our help. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your experience in leading Marines and being a leader in the DAV, and how resilience plays an important role in burnout prevention. Can you speak to that?
no, absolutely. Resilience is interesting, I think, and it's really it's a developed skill, I think, and it's developed in different ways. Many of us develop through childhood. I don't think that a baby is born with significant resilience, right? But depending on their culture, their environment, the home they were raised in, right, develops you into an adult, which will establish kind of in my mind, and through your teenage years, develop a baseline of resilience, right? And we can reflect and look at some people who we may think are more easily adaptable, right? They can handle adversity more than others. And sometimes that's through life experiences. But I don't believe anyone is fully prepared. I think that, you have to take a step back, and especially as it relates to burnout. Burnout can affect anybody. So as resilient as you may feel you are, it will catch up to you. I firmly believe there's no one above it. You can, we talk about the military, and you can talk about some of the most elite out there. We talk about Navy SEALs, right? They're some of the most elite military members in the world, frankly. But if you keep pushing them and they keep mission after mission after mission, you will see an impact on the other end. And that's well seen in today's society. Those coming out of the military who have, long-term effects from, frankly, the burnout that they faced, and they never took the time to recoup. They never had, if not taken the time, had the opportunity to better themselves, to work on themselves, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally. And being the most advanced military training in the world, right? One of the hardest courses to go through, they're susceptible to it as well. So, I mean, really, who isn't? So it's something that we all got to constantly work on. We got to constantly reflect on and see how we can polish it up and strengthen our resolve.
Yeah, so one of the things that I talk about when I am teaching about burnout is that the single best predictor of burnout is work overload. And your example of those Navy SEALs being able to do some really high level elite missions, of course, the most capable people in the world to be able to do those missions, but you can't do mission after mission after mission after mission and be able to still perform at that level. And so, yeah, there's a point, I think, where working too much just becomes too much for any one person to be able to handle, no matter how resilient they are.
Yeah, absolutely. We had similar experiences. I served in Iraq. I was in Iraq for almost all 2007. And as you'd imagine, there's not much time off. I mean,
Right.
so, you really have to capitalize on the opportunity that you have in those moments. But the burnout comes from different factors. And when I talk about lifelong effects, right? Most people are familiar with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or just PTS, post-traumatic stress. And a lot of that can be attributed to those conflict environments where people didn't have a chance to step back, right? When you're constantly on alert, when you spend a year in a combat environment and, you're under threat that entire time, there's nowhere for you to unplug. And now that's, a little bit more extreme than the work environment. But philosophically, it's the same solution to the problem, taking that step and reflecting on yourself and figuring out what your needs are, in that environment, whether it be a combat zone or it's the office.
Yeah, and it's not just psychologically is it the same thing, but it actually is physiologically the same thing. So that same system that gets activated when you are in a combat zone or when you are in a very stressful situation is your sympathetic nervous system. And that's the part of your nervous system that's the fight or flight. It gets you ready to fight or run or, freeze or faint, as it will. Lots of people have different reactions to that sympathetic nervous system. But your body doesn't understand the difference, as I say to my students, like your body doesn't understand the difference between I'm camping in the woods and all of a sudden there's a bear and I've got to get ready to fight this bear. It doesn't understand the difference between that and my boss is yelling at me because I have to stay and work an extra shift and I have to be here long. Like that, your body is still responding to the same fight or flight response. So obviously I would never try to say equivalent working in an office building to being like military service. But from a physiological perspective, it kind of doesn't matter as long as your body is seeing it as a threat. It is still depleting your immune system. It is still causing the release of cortisol, stress hormones, like all of those things are still being activated. So, so Sarah and I were joking around a little bit earlier, actually, about I don't know if Cody, have you ever watched The Office, the episode of The Office where Michael is trying to make the office people upstairs and their stressors be the equivalent as the warehouse workers downstairs. And the warehouse workers for safety training are like, there's this baler, you can lose a limb, don't be in the Baylor, like this is really serious, people can get hurt. And then upstairs in the office, they're talking about carpal tunnel syndrome and and seasonal affect disorder. And it's kind of a joke, right? These things are not equivalent. The stresses are not the same. But from a standpoint of like the effects of burnout, they kind of are the same for somebody who is working in a traditional office that's experiencing high work overload and a terrible work environment. You're still going to see these really bad negative outcomes, maybe not all the way to a diagnosis of PTSD, but you're still going to see negative outcomes. I don't know if you can see that between your experience like in Iraq and then also your experience working at the DAV now.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. There's a significant difference in the two, but the overlap, it's going to shorten your life. And either one, right? Those anxiety, the pressures, high blood pressure. People have all kinds of that anxiety, depression leads to all kinds of issues, especially later on in life. And so there's an absolute parallel there, and even to the point of some similar treatment, I think, for times for people when it gets that serious, right? There's so many preventive measures and opportunities to recognize, what's going on and kind of stop it before it gets to that point. But, that's the thing. And I think people push themselves and we're so caught up in the moment, right? And especially when people are younger, right? I just hit my 40s and, like any other 40-year-old, I'm watching what I eat and I'm trying to go to the gym more, right? I didn't care in my 20s and I didn't care that much more in my 30s. But, those are the years, too, that I may be doing long-term damage. Now, well, that is repairable and you can live a healthy life. But it's just not being cognizant to, the wear and tear from things such as burnout that I don't think people actively realize, and especially so in the nonprofit world. I mean, I think if you ask an ordinary person, say, talk about high-stress jobs, they talk about Wall Street. They talk about being a police officer, and absolutely those are high-stress jobs, right? But I'm not sure people would even take some people seriously if you said a nonprofit is high stress, right? Because I think there's this mentality that someone's operating out of their garage and they're stuffing bags with candy. Then it's a part-time job on the weekend kind of a thing. Now there's people doing that and it's wonderful, but that's not what we're talking about. There's a lot of people in this country working in nonprofits and doing more work, and if not more jobs that multiple people would do in the private world, because nonprofits don't have the resources to provide for all the help you need at times. And so it just exacerbates that problem.
Most definitely. So as I'm listening to you talk, I'm kind of going back a little bit. So my leadership journey started in high school. I was in Marine Corps Junior ROTC, and they drilled into us USMC leadership traits and principles. And I'm thinking about the principle of knowing your people and looking out for their welfare. And so can you talk a little bit about, from the leadership perspective, how you know when people that you're leading are experiencing burnout, the steps that you take as a leader to help them navigate through or maybe mitigate those stages of burnout?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll do it kind of, one that just really stands out to me as I think an obvious one is when I was in the Marines. And, there's a lot of young people in the Marines, right? A lot of individuals who join right after high school. At times there's a lot of immaturity. You mature pretty quick in a lot of situations, but you're still 19, 20, 21, 22, early 20s, right? And so along with that comes maybe rowdiness, comes humor. There's a lot of rough housing and those types of things that you would kind of expect, right? When that quieted down, you knew something was going on. When people would sit there and they're not poking at each other, they're not teasing each other, they're not making inappropriate jokes, you could sense it. There was something in the air. I mean, you felt something was going on, right? And it was so obvious. And of course, in the military, you've faced certain situations where there's great adversity and struggle and hardship. And so the parallels there are very apparent. Everyone's quiet. No one's joking. Well, it's because this significant thing happened, this loss we had, or whatever the case may have been. It's not so often in the office, right? And so for me, it really goes to knowing your people. You have to know your people, because there's people who maybe they do joke. They like to, and they're extroverted, and they're at everyone's cubicle all day, and they're chatting and things, but they work very hard, and suddenly they're not doing that, right? you have to keep an eye on those things. You have to pay attention to see when, people that do certain things when they're not doing them. And sometimes that's easier than others. I would say one of my greatest challenges when it comes to certain employees is those that maybe are normally more quiet and they don't naturally have the identifiers. And I've had to learn as a leader because I've had a couple employees approach me at what may have been a point of no return where they're I can't do this anymore. I'm burned out. I just can't. And I didn't recognize the signals. And sometimes you're not going to. Sometimes people, maybe they work at home a couple days a week and you just don't have quite the interaction with them and they're working on the other side, whatever the case may be. The onus is on me, is on other leaders to ask the right questions at the right time. And there's some employees now that I know they will put their heart, their soul, everything they have into every project and responsibility that they have. Well, therefore, the responsibility is on me every once in a while to go, hey, are you doing okay? Can I help you with something? Can we take something off your plate? I see you sent me an email at 10:30 last night. Is that something going on? Did you work all day and then go home and work all night? We have to be mindful of those things because there's people who won't tell us. They won't tell us until it gets to the point of no return where worst case scenario, they leave and they're going to go somewhere else. Or, once again, they have long-term effects or something like that from the stress that they put themselves under. So you got to be cognizant. You got to be on the lookout for those and actively make it part of your leadership strategy is to identify people who are struggling.
Yeah. And I'm thinking too about you. How many staff do you have at DAV? What is your size right now?
So nationally, we're a little shy of 600 here in Erlanger, Kentucky at our national headquarters. We're about 180 roughly.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's only one Cody, and we've already established that, you don't want to be overloaded in your own role. So I'm thinking about how important it must be for you as the leader of this organization to be modeling the kind of behavior that you want for your supervisors, your managers, other leaders in your organization to exhibit. So you can't check on, all 600 people in your organization or even all, 100 plus that are in the headquarters where you are. How do you encourage or model for other people who are supervisors and managers to engage in this kind of behavior, to be checking on the staff to make sure that they're paying attention to those details, such as when emails are sent and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So, it's a tough question for me because I care, right? And so some of these things you just do because you care about people. And I think that's so important that we don't get caught up in business and we remember that, right? And so when I work with leaders and things like that, and frankly, all employees, I guess I'll start with something that I do. I meet with every new employee here at our national headquarters. So I sit down and I chat with them and I want to get to know them and I want them to know me. I want them to know my door's always open. And literally it is, unless I'm on a podcast or something and I have to close it for a moment. The door's open. And one thing that I tell them amongst, opportunity and welcoming the team and thanking them for choosing DAV as a place of employment is I talk to them about something I learned in the Marine Corps, and Marines are well familiar with this. It's mission accomplishment, troop welfare. And, we don't publicize that. I don't have a sign hanging on my wall, but that's truly how I feel. We're here to take care of a mission. Serving those that we serve, disabled veterans, their family members, caregivers, that's priority number one. But you know what? Next, we're going to take care of each other. There's nothing else that should be. And there's times where there's overlap. There's times where, somebody's given more than they're getting, and that's okay. I mean, we have that type of relationship. And so I make sure I treat people that way. There was a situation actually last week that there was some adversity here. It was quite a struggle for me dealing with a very difficult situation. And it was interesting because the actions that I had to take were the actions that an executive director sometimes has to take. And I had individuals that report to me, that work for me, and they sent me some text messages. I had messages from my employees going, hey, I know you had a tough day. I'm thinking about you. And I got to tell you what, I was so proud and it meant so much to me that they had a level of comfort with me and that we have established a culture together that, yes, it's business and we do business things, and that's very important for the success of this organization, but that we care about each other. So to have that, come up too without just me sending it down was really special. And so, just trying to convey that and making an effort. And, we're all human. I have to put reminders on my calendar when it's somebody's birthday. If I'm caught up and I heard some news about an employee being ill and I don't have time at the moment to acknowledge that, send them a card, I'm putting a Post-it note right on my monitor because that is important and I'm not going to forget it before I go home today. Because sure enough, life will get in the way. So everyone picks up on that, and I think as long as you set that tone, you don't have to do much else. People will follow along.
I love that. You said something that I wrote down that I wanted to bring up. And I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially, like, caring for people on the outside of your organization requires that you take care of the people on the inside of your organization. And I think that is such an incredibly important point for leaders to hear. So often, so I am a supervisor in my organization, and so often I'm thinking about how we're providing services for the folks that we're providing services for, but having to remember that in order for us to provide those services, we have to care for the people who are doing the work. So I need to be making sure as a leader that I'm checking on the people who are doing that frontline work for folks, or else it doesn't work. We're not getting services out to people in the manner that we need to if we're not caring for our people inside of the organization. So I think that's just such a great point that I just wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I mean I try and live that as much as I can over here. Right, there's a time where business is business, and sometimes that gets in the way, and sometimes you have to make difficult decisions at an organization, especially as large as ours and as an expansive as ours. But it's the golden rule: treat people how they want to be treated. It's that's how it should be. I mean, we need to look out for each other. I'm sorry, that's the platinum rule. The golden rule is treat people how you want to be treated. Treat them how they want to be treated. Everyone's different. Everyone has different needs and obligations in life, right? And I want to be sensitive when somebody they have a child, right? I want them to have the time to enjoy that because that's meaningful and that's significant in their life. Or, they lose someone they care about. Well, that sucks. And so, we want to be there for them in that moment too, right? And it's all these contribute to, when we talk about burnout, and we talk about mental health and resilience, all these come together and you're much easier. It's much easier to weather a storm when you have a community, when you have people around you that you care about, and people spend a lot of time at work. We are a lot of people's community, and to show that you care really takes us through the challenging times a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm thinking about so much about what it means to be a leader and to lead in a way that allows for there not to be burnout in your staff. And I think so many times we might think about being a leader is someone who comes in and makes really you're just making very important decisions all day. You're like the decider, right? You're the decider in chief, and you are saying yes, no constantly. And so much of the way that you've been describing leadership is about not inward focused on what the leader is doing, but rather outward focused of paying attention to what do my employees need? What are their actions that they're taking? How is their behavior changed? What's happening in their life that needs to be celebrated? How can we help them grieve? Where's the work-life balance? I think good leadership, as you said, I love you also mentioned the platinum rule. The golden rule would be do unto others as you want it have done to you. And the platinum rule is no, treat others the way that they want to be treated, which means that you have to know the people. You have to actually know your people and have a sense of trust that is built. It's a different way of framing leadership than I think what a lot of people think about when they think about I'm going to become a leader in my organization. It's not really about you anymore. It's about the other people that you are leading.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing, and I share this with leaders that I work with every day, and somebody comes to see me, right? I've said it time and time again. I'll continue to say, there's no one more important than the person standing at my door. I will stop whatever I'm doing. I mean, I don't this presentation to the board of directors. It doesn't matter. Whoever's there is more important, and that door is open for everybody. And so, being able to make that time and the significant and show it. That's the thing too, right? Talking about workplaces being family is so cliche and it's just so thrown around right now, right? I'm hesitant to say it, but I truly feel like we have that here, that we have that kind of welcoming, caring, loving culture amongst coworkers, and but it is thrown around, and I don't think people often embrace that as much as they should, but also I think it's important for especially young leaders to realize It's not inherent. I think we all have a preconceived notion of being a leader before we get into true leadership roles and how it's going to be. And, people don't just do things because you told them to do them. Now, in the Marine Corps, it's a little bit easier. There's an expectation there that you have something on a rank on your shoulder that tells people you're going to tell them what to do. But you quickly learn when you get out, people aren't just going to do that. You have to develop credibility. You have to develop trust with people, respect with individuals, and then, you're able to facilitate those truly successful relationships.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about being a parent. How much is being a parent like being a leader? It's like, have you ever parented a teenager? That's kind of how sometimes being a leader is you're trying to convince somebody else to do, to engage in a different activity, maybe than what they want to. I don't know. I'm always trying to be like really cool around my 15-year-old. I'm like, hi, like, just casually coming in. How's it go? Like, if I want her to do something for me, I probably do need to like really care about how her day went and to come in and ask questions. Like if I walk in with that approach first and build connection and then ask her to clean her room, she's going to be much more likely to do it, right? Than if I just come in with a demand. I think some parents would much rather have more of a military situation in their households where you just tell your kid to do something and they do it. But generally humans don't always vibe with that kind of approach unless there is something like in the military, you're doing that for a reason, right? You're doing it because you know that it helps you to meet your mission, and it makes people buy into that. I think more so in the military, but yeah, in an organization, you can't just like go around barking demands and expect people to do exactly what you ask them to do when you want them to do it, unless it's something that is urgent and that we have a really good relationship, and I wouldn't ask you to do this right now unless I really needed you to do it. Yeah, I don't know, Cody, do you have a way that you phrase the kind of leadership that you are offering? I mean, we can think about different theories of leadership: authentic leadership, servant leadership, transformational leadership. Do you have a way that you kind of frame what your leadership style is?
I mean, I usually, in general conversation, I'd say servant leadership, right? But I mean, I just sum it up as caring, and it's so simple, and it sounds like such a simple word, but that's absolutely what it is. And to your point about the parallels with children, right? I've learned so much about leadership from my kids too. They don't, and yes, occasionally the Marine in me comes out, and I am the barking orders and do this, do that. But it is no more effective with my children as it is with people in the office. And so, they're getting a little older, and they're still not. My kids are still small, 5, 8, and 10. Especially with the 8 and 10-year-old, right? We can have a conversation. And it is vitally important to me that they know that I care about them and that I love them. And whether I have boy, girl, boy, and whether it's my daughter or my sons, they're going to get a hug and kiss from me every single day. I'll be an old man and I'll have full grown men and I'm going to give them a kiss on the cheek, because I care about them. And, I think that just strengthens our relationship, and the communication and really the trust between my kids and I. Now, I'm not going around the office kissing anyone on the cheek, I assure you.
No.
Yeah, that's an HR nightmare. Don't do that.
Yes, this would be a terrible situation, but nonetheless, I am trying to establish that trust. So, you talk about that in, military terms. Yeah, you can bark orders and you can yell at people, but those are not the most successful military leaders. You may be familiar with James Mattis. He was 4-star general in the Marine Corps, former Department of Defense secretary, and that was something that he taught while I was in the Marine Corps. I spent some time and got to see him speak in front of us when I was a junior Marine, and that's what he showed us. He showed us care. He showed us compassion. And he showed us that he wasn't above us. He was one of us. And it was so significant when you have people walking around and they have these big shiny stars on their collar and they don't really have the time of day for you. But he took the time to talk to us and to show that he cared. We had an instance, not to get into too much of a tangent, but we were in Iraq. We were assigned to security for the Department of State. Well, because we were assigned to the Department of State, although we were in a combat zone and we were taking incoming fire and rockets and mortars, we weren't eligible for a medal showing we had served in Iraq, which is ridiculous. So you spend a year in Iraq and you don't get an acknowledgement for it because of this loophole, because they never anticipated us providing this role in a combat zone of that nature. One of the Marines we were with stopped him when he was there, which was pretty bold to stop a 4-star general, and explained it. Days later, we were notified we were getting that medal. And, you know, when you take action like that, that's when the next day that he could go and bark an order and say, do this, and we all do it, because he's established that trust with us. So it's so significant.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a great story, and how courageous for that person to stop him and ask for that well-deserved honor. You know, one of the things that we had also asked you about was, you know, was there anything that you were like listening to, reading, paying attention to that has you thinking about burnout? And you had mentioned the book Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I have not read the book, but I've heard a little bit. I've heard him talk about the book, and I know a little bit about it. I'm just wondering what in that book speaks to you about how to handle burnout and what some of the things that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, I love the book. I mean, if somebody asks any kind of self-help book, anything like that, I always talk about Think Like a Monk. I'm not traditionally a self-help book kind of guy. I believe in continual development. Don't get me wrong. Education is important. We should all keep learning. I'm a lifelong learner. But when I get home and I've been looking at words all day long, it's hard for me to read like a self-help book. My brain needs that break, right? Or I'll get burned out. So,
Definitely.
you know, I take a break and I'll listen to a lot. So I listen to a lot. But I'll tell you, Think Like a Monk, I have read twice and I've listened to once, just to remind myself of some of the pieces in here. So there's a lot of pieces, parts to this book, but in short, Jay Shetty lived a life as a monk for a period of time. He spent years living in a monastery as a monk, and he's taken life lessons from that experience and now has wrote this book, and he does a lot of other different self-help types of things. But when it specifically comes to the book and as it relates to burnout, he talks about detachment. And I think that's so huge in how you detach, right? And when I say that, people are like, detachment, that sounds, what do you mean? That doesn't sound good, right? It's not detachment from caring. It's detachment from clinging to outcomes. You just can't control things. There's so many things in this world that you cannot control, yet we obsess and we obsess and we obsess. And, you know, we can go back, don't cry over spilled milk. That doesn't help us. But through some of his strategies, he helps, you know, people reset, find a calm and a stillness when people need it, right? It really taught me a lot, and I meditated a little bit, but I meditate every single day now. And this book was a big attributing factor to that, right? And that's something I do to combat burnout, to combat stress and anxiety, and you know, find more peace in a crazy world. And so he has those teachings and routines. Monks go through routines, daily routines, and how important some of these routines are. And so, you know, these are skill sets that, you know, when you find that peaceness, when you find a greater calm and something I think we all strive for it, if not always, at one point or another in our lives, he provides so many tools and just real life experience that he has had with these small little changes that just have a drastic impact on your quality of life and your balance of everything you have going on.
Yeah, I think that's really great. As I was listening, because again, like Courtney, I haven't read the book yet, but it's on my to be read list now, my TBR list now. And I've shown it to my husband, and I'm like, you have to read this because he meditates, and you know, he's a very mindful guy. Um, it's a lot about mindsets too. It's about how you frame things. And he talked a bit. I was listening to a podcast of him and somebody else discussing the book and talking about like how to reframe negativity in a way that is more useful for you to move forward in a positive way. And I just really appreciated that conversation from him. Um, when we think about, you were talking about strategies that he had given, things that have been beneficial to you. Are there resources that you can think of that nonprofit leaders can use to help combat burnout in themselves, help combat burnout in their employees? Like, are there specific things that you do? You mentioned meditation, but are there specific things that you do or that you recommend to folks in your organization or that you recommended to your Marines? to help combat those negative feelings and those feelings of burnout?
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, the book speaks to this, and just through my own life lessons I've learned, routine is so significant.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel that way. When you approach the day from a place of routine, and you can't control everything, but having a little bit of control will really set you up for success. And a couple areas of routine that I have is I review a lot of paperwork, so maybe contracts, and maybe different communications, marketing pieces. It's a little monotonous. It's not always my favorite thing to sit down with a contract and go through it, right? So when I get to work first thing in the morning, that's what I do. You know, the thing that I'm least excited about, I get it out of the way. And it's a sense of accomplishment. I feel good about it. It doesn't feel like it's hanging over my head. That's huge for me. Another important routine type thing is when I first got into this role, I was just putting in crazy hours. There's just not enough time to do everything that I feel needs to be done. And so, there's two things that I had to look at. One was giving some things up, letting people help me. And, that's so important. We have to delegate. We have to be smart about that. Because the next thing was super important to me. And if I didn't delegate, I wouldn't be able to do that. And is every night, every evening, I try and get home by 5 o'clock. I get in the office pretty early before kids go to school and everything. 5 to 8, 8:30, that's my family's time. And if someone needs me, they can call me, but I'm not answering emails. I'm not texting, any work items or anything like that. And that is a fairly hard and fast rule for me. I have to travel and I'm away from home in those times. So that's my family's time. That's my time to recharge. That's in big picture, it's a few hours, and I may spend that at a little kid's t-ball game, or maybe it's a football game or basketball, or we may just sit around at home and watch a movie and eat popcorn or something like that. But those are those moments that I get to recharge. And early on, and specifically in this, I was greatly infringing on that. And not only was I suffering, but then in turn my family is suffering because they're not getting the best me. They're not getting my attention, and especially I think with children, especially when they're young, they need that. You can't have your nose in a phone when they're trying to show you their artwork. They need an attentive parent just as much as I need them to go to bed on time. And so it's a give and take relationship there, and I wanted to make sure I was giving all I could as a parent. And then in turn, I was also satisfying the need that I have as an individual to get a little bit of respite, to unplug from work for a minute and the challenges that are there and be at home. And then the only other thing I do, and this doesn't work for everybody, some people greatly enjoy working at home. I almost never work at home. And it's because I don't want work and life. I mean, they will infringe on each other, and they absolutely do. But me personally, as an individual, I struggle with that. If I have a workspace set up and work is there and it's within one flight of stairs of me, it can be quite a distraction in my life. It's harder for me to separate myself from it. So those are some active things that I've really done to make sure that, I keep everything in check, that I try and balance a reasonable, work-life balance, and, pay enough attention to work and enough attention to myself and my family.
It's so important to have that work-life balance. And I almost hate the phrase work-life balance because it indicates that we can somehow get that perfectly in balance. Like if I work from home, I can perfectly balance work from home. If I work from the office, I can perfectly balance work from home. So in the literature, sometimes you'll see it now referred to as like work-life flexibility. And it's how can I flex my work life around my home life and vice versa. And I think that as we've talked about, a lot of people that work in nonprofits, when you do have that mission, when you have people who you are serving that will never stop needing that help, I think it can be really hard for a staff person to set up boundaries where they say like, I'm going to not check my email from 5 o'clock until 8:30 because that's family time. And I think that that's where leadership becomes so critically important. If you have a leader who is not modeling those behaviors or is expecting staff to answer their emails all night long, then even if somebody is resilient, even if someone knows, even if they want to live like a monk, right? Even if they've read Jay Shetty's book and they want to detach, because of the culture of their organization, they don't feel like they can. And so they end up having work creep into their home life. They end up having work overload, and then they end up being burned out. So I really applaud you as being a a leader who has those hard and fast rules, and that you know yourself and you know best where you work. And so you're going to work in the office. You know yourself best to say, I need to put up these boundaries between 5 and 8:30, and this is family time. That hopefully other people in your organization also see that and they say, oh, okay, not only do I know I should put up these boundaries, but I can put up these boundaries and mitigate some of that, and detach from the stress of work so that I can mitigate that stress and not be burned out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. You really have to develop that. And I think people have to be cognizant and that's another life lesson, right? You learn as you go along. And I've had individuals that, I've worked in, not particularly at DAV, but elsewhere where I would get an email in the middle of the night. Well, then the expectation is I should be working in the middle of the night, right? You can't help but feel that way. And so, I'll tell you what, and there's times where we all get there where I'm super busy and you know what, kids are in bed and I have to do some emails. But you know what? Don't tell anybody this, but I put email delay on. So I don't want to obligate people to send emails at 9:30 at night. So you know what, and they shouldn't be looking at their emails at 9:30 at night. We have a culture here that if you have a problem, you call. So if there's a problem, there's something life and death, it's urgent. I mean, there's a veteran in crisis. We will handle that in the immediate. But a lot of these things are not that. A lot of things can wait until the morning. And so those emails don't have to hit till 7:30, 8, 9 a.m. And that's what I try and strive to do and have others, because I've been in that situation. I've been in a situation where it made me feel obligated and it's hard to turn off. I think, like I said, when I talked about my family, that was really a big turning point for me. And I caution people who, if it's not enough for themselves, think about the others in your life, whether it's family or friends or pets or, whatever it is. Think about others. Because if it was just me, I'd be working myself to death. It'd be hard to turn it off. And I've been in those situations, but it's about other people. And there's other people in this world that need you. I mean, and so it's important that you remain cognizant of that and you turn it off and you step back. All of us that work for nonprofits, we all have a legacy, whether we feel that way or not. There's an impact in the work we do every day that is trickling down, and oftentimes we don't see it and we have no idea. Even somebody starting out in a role, in an entry-level role, it can be an extraordinary impact in somebody's life by a couple of simple little things that they did during the day. And it's important people remember that. They remember that, they're having that impact, they're being successful, they're making a difference, and that helps carry things forward as well.
Yeah, most definitely. You said something there about the work that we're doing for folks from our organizations. And I want to give you an opportunity to tell all of our listeners all of the great things that you guys are doing at DAV for veterans.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you for that. DAV's been around for roughly 105 years. So we were founded in the Cincinnati area. I've been here, but we're a national organization. So we have over 100 locations nationally. Those are staffed by national service officers, like I mentioned, our benefits counselors, and they're sitting down, they're emailing, they're texting with veterans and helping them with just a suite of services. So a couple things that really are top of the list for us is sitting down and helping someone file for VA benefits, VA healthcare, home loan, education, all of those things, medical benefits. Navigating that process is very difficult. Traditionally, a lot of people get attorneys, entirely unnecessary. DAV does it for free, and our folks are highly trained to assist with those pieces. We have a huge legislative effort, and so we are doing a lot on the Hill, and we have for a very long time, getting critical legislation passed in support of veterans and their family members. It's huge for us. We have a newer caregiver program we're really excited about. This came in last year. And for those of us that have had to been a caregiver, and sadly many of us in our life have found ourselves in that position, you just don't know what to do. My mother got ill a few years ago and it happened quickly, and I don't know. Do I call the county? Who do I talk to? Do I call Social Security? We set up a program where individuals can go online. DAV.org has all our resources. They find our caregiver program, they can call, they can talk to a specialist, and a specialist answers all those questions. This is who you contact. And you know what? They'll even help contact some of those people for you, and they'll help with forms and really guide people through the process. We have an employment program. There's not another organization in the country that can substantiate more job offers to veterans over the last 10 years than DAV. An entrepreneurial program. volunteer program. We have volunteers donating millions of hours and driving millions of miles in vehicles to pick up veterans and take them to medical appointments. We have a disaster relief program, which areas that have faced natural disasters, we're sending supplies and also cutting checks for individuals. Maybe their house was destroyed and they need a place to stay, and insurance will take time. So we're help covering some of those costs. So we're investing heavily in homeless programs, also mental health. Of course, is huge for us. We partner with some organizations right now that are doing tremendous work in that regard, and we're very proud of those outcomes. So there's even more on top of that. So anyone that needs assistance, whether it's a veteran, a family member of a veteran, it's a caregiver, it's a survivor, DAV.org is the best place to start. We have a locator on there for closest office, but you don't got to show up at an office. You can always call and email, and we'll help wherever we can.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I appreciate that you mentioned not just services for veterans, but also folks can volunteer, it sounds like, for DAV. So if you are not a veteran in need, or you don't have a family member who's a veteran in need, maybe you could volunteer to help take a veteran to a doctor's appointment, drive folks around. Does DAV also have used furniture stores? Is that a thing? I feel like my whole first apartment in college was absolutely all DAV furniture. I think.
Yeah, so we do. There are some thrift stores around the country, and there's different relationships. So we have chapters and departments. Departments are states, and chapters are local community DAV organizations. And yeah, some of them do have thrift stores. So different pockets of the country. They're not everywhere, but you will find some DAV branded thrift stores. So for sure. And then also you mentioned the volunteers, and I appreciate you mentioning that. Lots of great volunteer programs. Some is driving. Some is at the VA Medical Center. Here at our national headquarters, we have monthly volunteer opportunities. And also there's a Volunteer for Veterans Network on DAV.org. And I really love that because it can be such simple things. I mean, who doesn't have an hour once a month or once every couple months to sit down with maybe a Korean War veteran who's lonely and just, would like someone to visit them, right? Sit on their porch and have a cup of coffee, or maybe, pick up some groceries for them from the grocery store on the way there. So endless option. You can mow the lawn, help fix a creaky step, whatever it is. I mean, anybody can do it who's interested in helping volunteer.
Yeah, all kinds of wonderful ways that folks could support the incredible work that you're doing. Okay, so last question for you, Cody, which is wrapping up, is the one message that you would share with other people going through burnout? Like somebody listening to this conversation today, what is your one takeaway message that you would want them to have?
Very simply, you're human. And we forget that. Burnout is not a weakness. I mean, we're so critical of ourselves, and many of us set the bar so high. Burnout is not a failure. It's your body telling you to take a step back, take a break. Look at those resources, some of the things we've talked about, and, get through it, because it's not a weakness, and you're human. That's the message I'd provide.
Yes. Great message.
Love it.
Very, very good.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks.
I love it. Cody, this has been such an amazing conversation. I so appreciate your story and the way that you lead your organization and how that's been informed by your work in the military. I just really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much. Absolute honor. I really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. Thank you for your service. And thank you also for being here today. This was great.
Great. Thank you.
What a great conversation with Cody. I really think that, so much of what he said, I was just like, yes, absolutely.
For the audio listeners, just know Sarah and I were doing a lot of nodding, but trying not to interrupt him with uh-huhs and yes, but we were both nodding a lot.
Like a lot. Like he said at one point, he was talking about how they've established their culture and how he wanted it to feel like a culture of caring and how he really sets the example with that. And it's just like chef's kiss, beautiful. Like that whole conversation was just lovely.
Yeah. And I'm just super excited that he brought up the platinum rule, because you may know Bill Gentry, who wrote oh gosh, now it's somewhere back here on my bookshelf. I've got it. But he wrote a book that Be the Boss That Everybody Wants You to Be, something like that. I can't remember the exact title. I'll drop it in the show notes of what the exact title is. But in that book, Bill talks about how a lot of people are promoted into a leadership position because they're very good at their job, but they may not necessarily be trained on how to be a leader. And so they get into a leadership role and they think, oh, I should just be the kind of leader that I would want. I need to do the things that are like, I want to be talked to this way. This is how I would want to be motivated if, you know, when I was a staff person and now I'm in a manager position, just do whatever I wanted when I was in a staff position. And that is the golden rule. But the platinum rule that Bill talks about in his book is no, you treat other people how they want to be treated. So it's not all about you. You have to really get to know your employees and know what are the ways that they want to be communicated with, what are the ways that they want to be motivated by. And so I was so appreciated that Cody was like talking about how you have to pay attention to your employees. You've got to know that the extroverted ones are real quiet right now. And then you've got to be even more careful and thoughtful about how you pay attention to what the introverted people, how are they acting differently? And when are they going to, you know, when they feel burnout, how is that going to be different from when your extroverted folks are feeling burnout? And then knowing how to approach those people and what's the best thing for them to be able to handle that burnout. Like you've got to really know your people to be able to know that, and not just think only about like, well, when I'm burned out, I would like for this to happen. Like, well, you're not everybody, buddy. Like you got other people you got to consider now.
We're all different.
We're all different people.
We're all different people. I also appreciated that he brought up that we are whole people, that we're not just workers, that we have families and friends and hobbies and other things, and that those things are just as important. And that we have to make sure that we're, like he talked about scheduling, how he schedules himself and how he ensures that he makes time for his family and the things that are important to him. And I think that was just such a great point, that we as mission driven, passionate, nonprofit people can't just give until there's nothing left. Like we're not fulfilling the mission that way. So I just really appreciated his thoughts on that as well.
When we think about stress, what causes us to feel stress, according to like the kind of classical model of stress, is that you have to see something as threatening and you have to feel like you don't have the ability to control or handle that threatening thing. If you are camping in the woods and you see a bear, I think most people are going to be freaked out by that. I guess unless you're like a bear whisperer or something. And then
I'm going to be freaked out. I camp in the woods all the time. If a bear shows up, I'm freaked out.
Right, exactly. You're going to be freaked out by that. Most people would, but not everyone. If some people may wrongly believe that they can handle that, they can cope with the situation. I can fight a bear. Everything's fine. So they might not feel the same. They may not feel the same level of stress. So there is this component of not being able to control or handle something that is required for one to feel stress. So it has to be something that is threatening, but also something that feels uncontrollable. The things have to be considered both threatening and uncontrollable in order for you to feel stress. And so I appreciated how he was talking about this think like a monk. One of the things that you get around in this mindset is you don't try to control everything. Don't try to control everything. Don't try to control the outcomes. Great advice. But also let me control my schedule down to the minute.
Right.
And so it's a way of like bringing a sense of control back into our lives by being able to control our schedules. I am in control over when I wake up. I am in control over what I do in the mornings. I'm in control of like my routine before I go into work. And a lot of people who are feeling burned out, they may feel that burnout because they don't have that sense of control. Yeah. They're not in charge over when they show up at work or when they get to leave work. They don't have control over their schedule. That can be very threatening to a person and can be very stressful. So it is funny to me that monks are like, according to the way that he talked about it, these monks are saying, don't worry about being in control over the outcomes, but let me control every part of my day. It's such a good hack for like how you can let go of the things that you can't control, but focus on the things you can control. And that in itself can help lessen that stress response.
Absolutely. Just very interesting. I loved everything about that conversation, and hopefully we can have him back again at some point, because just a great convo. Just
Part
appreciate
two.
him. Part two.
Part two. Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Cody, for joining us. That was really great.
You're great. The Ripples of Gratitude is a segment that we do each episode that gives us the opportunity to express our appreciation and gratitude for the people around us in hopes that it inspires them to share their gratitude with others, causing a ripple in our community. And my ripple today goes out to Lieutenant Colonel Mark Dobbs, United States Marine Corps retired. So as I mentioned during the episode, I was in Marine Corps Junior ROTC in high school, and that's really where my leadership journey began. So as a part of that class, we learned about the leadership traits and principles of United States Marines and the things that they teach their officers and higher ranking enlisted people on how to treat their subordinates. And so those principles and traits really solidified themselves within me when I was learning how to be a leader. There are things like tact and dependability and fairness, all things that would seem like, common sense. Like you just treat people well, but seeing them in such a clear-cut way and then applying those in my high school setting really kind of set a foundation for me on the type of leader I wanted to be. So without having Lieutenant Colonel Dobbs kind of set the example for those things to teach those things to me, I'm not sure that I would be the leader that I am today. And so because of that, he gets my ripple today, Courtney. How about you?
Well, I think that you had mentioned that it should be common sense for people to lead in that way, but it's not common sense.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that people do have to learn how to lead in a way that's not being that kind of stereotypical drill sergeant who's yelling at everyone. Like I think some people might even listen to our episode with Cody and be even a little surprised about the fact that he is saying things like, hey, a really good leader in the military is one who is caring and compassionate. And, that may run against what our biases are about what we think that might be happening in the military. So, and I love the fact that this is like a seed that was maybe planted in little Sarah, high school Sarah, that now has grown to help you be the leader that you are today. So yeah, that's a really great ripple. I love it.
Thank you. How about you?
So my ripple today is about women supporting other women.
Love it.
And I have to shout that out because I am admittedly right on the cusp of Gen X, but I am still Gen X technically. And my generation, we just were not really well known for women supporting other women. I have to be honest. Like it was kind of like a cutthroat mentality, like which woman is going to be the one to succeed. And I really appreciate younger generations that are out there supporting each other, these women supporting each other. And so my specific ripple of gratitude today is to my friend, Julianne Brown Miola. And Julianne is a leader in her own right at her organization. And I'm planning a webinar, a leadership webinar, and she has recognized and recommended one of her colleagues to be on that webinar. She advocated for her, reached out to me, said, this is the great person. This is someone who's going to be fantastic. And I just love that. I love to see leaders who are not just looking out for their own best interests, but they're also looking for the next opportunity for people that they are leading. And for that to be a woman doing that to another woman is really exciting. It just makes me very happy and gives me very warm, fuzzy feelings.
We love it. We love girls. We love it when we can stand up and help each other. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. So that hopefully that ripple will extend to other folks hearing you talk about your leadership experience from high school with your sergeant and me talking about my friend Julianne. So that's our ripples for today.
So that's the end of our episode today. This episode of the Burnout Room is sponsored by the Kentucky Psychological Foundation. If you'd like to help support our work bringing free mental health resources to Kentucky nonprofits, please consider donating at KentuckyPsychologicalFoundation.org.
A huge thanks to our producer, Nikki Collerich, for all of her amazing work, and to my dad, Mike Russell, for composing our music.
And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this community. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and feel free to leave a comment about topics that would be most helpful for you and your organization.
We'll see you next time.